Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Brett Wells, owner of Wells Family Dental Group and founder of Dental HQ, an online platform helping group practices and DSOs create and manage their own dental membership plans. Welcome to the show, Brett. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Thanks so much, Mike. Doing well. It's a Thursday morning here, right? Yeah, in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm in the southeast.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast. You're definitely one of an intriguing dentist because of the other stuff that you do, and we're going to cover that very soon. But first of all, tell me a bit more about you and your background.
Yeah, so exactly. I'm a dentist. I consider myself a dentist by trade, kind of an entrepreneur by passion. I'm kind of a creative problem solver. So, built my first dental office. And once it kind of got off the ground and at full capacity and running really well, I just got kind of bored and looked for other things to do. And then at first I was just kind of building dental offices and then kind of pivoted into technology. But yeah, so I'm a dentist. I graduated dental school back in 2006 from the University of North Carolina. I then did a 1-year AEGD residency down in Florida through University of Florida in Jacksonville. Came back to Raleigh, opened up my first dental practice in 2008, kind of scratch start. The cool thing about doing a residency down in Florida was, I did probably 50 implants, full mouth rehabilitations, tons of endo, tons of surgery. So I came back with a really strong clinical foundation so I could just focus on the business side, which is a real passion of mine. So opened up that first practice 2008, opened up another practice with a friend of mine in 2012. And then actually funny, you don't know this, but funny, in 2014, I opened up a small, fast casual gourmet hot dog restaurant that had that for a few years. Yeah. And then 2017, launched Dental HQ membership plan platform. 2018, opened my third dental practice. 2019, bought a practice 2 hours away at the beach. COVID hit. 2021, sold the acquisition. I'll never do another. Well, I won't say I'll never, but learned a lot from that acquisition. And then in the past 3 months, opened up two scratch start dental practices. So, if I'm not building, I'm bored. So I'm always on the run doing something.
Dude, that is awesome. Like, so that's what. So it started at 2008. So in 14 years, you've done all that.
Yeah. I guess I don't know if I've ever
mad.
listed everything like that before. So yeah, I am. I'm a glutton for punishment. Some of this stuff's failed, by the way. I've lost money, and but for me, it's I can't have an idea and like an idea I think's really good and not pursue it because I don't ever want to get to the end of my road and go, man, I wish I'd done that. So I'll do it.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think we talked about this in the pre-podcast call. It's like we both seem to be like ideas people, where we've got the ideas and there's a whole stack of them. And it's just probably finding the right time to do it. But it sounds like you just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, well, I'm a visionary through and through. Like, I work a lot with the EOS system. I learned this through EOS that I'm a visionary. I've got some operator tendencies, but I don't always think things out as robustly as I should. And so, like, I've learned over time, like, I've got the vision and I know how to make it work, but I need like an operator in these businesses with me to really make them successful. That's kind of what I missed on the restaurant, was not having a day-to-day operator in the business. And so I've learned now, if I've got great visions, if I'm going to launch a business, I need an operator in there that's really strong. And when I failed, it's because I didn't have that.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I guess that's the beauty of doing so many businesses, that you do figure out the pattern and so on. Like if you only do one, then it probably fails, and then you never really understand why. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So we've done the, I would say, very quick, like business like history of Brett Wells. Let's take it back a little bit. So one of my favorite questions is to ask dentists is, how did you get into dentistry? Like, what was the pull? Was there family ties or
yeah,
or
no, I kind of just fell into it. I was an underachieving high school student who was, I just like to play sports and have fun with my friends. And my senior year of high school, we had to do an externship, spend a month out of school, kind of learning or observing in a profession. And one of my good friends' dads was a periodontist in Raleigh. And, I was over at his house just hanging out, as high school kids do. And his dad was like, hey, why don't you do your externship at my office? He offered it. I didn't have to do anything. So I was like, sure, it's easy enough. So I show up at his office. He set it up to where I went to different specialists and general dentists over the course of that month, and just became really intrigued with the profession. As I learned more about it, I learned, I could work with my hands, own my own business, which I really liked. And so I went from being like a bottom of the class student to, having a goal. I'm very goal oriented, to then becoming kind of a straight A student through college and then getting into dental school. So that's my story of how I got into dentistry.
Wow, so that's quite a turnaround then. So you really think like getting like a taste of what you could have, like kind of got the wheels turning in your head to sort of buckle down?
Yeah. I mean, it turns out I realized this then, like I'm just very goal oriented. And, in high school, I was just kind of bored. I'm pretty ADD, and I didn't really apply myself. I just, kind of played sports because they were fun, and hung out with friends because that was fun. And then, classroom kind of was boring. But then once I found a use, or like had a goal and a need to do well in school, then I got my act together and focused and did well in school. So it's, I've learned a lot about myself over the years.
Yes, that's awesome. Did the like your friends and family notice that switch?
Oh yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, to not really focusing on school, doing the bare minimum, to then, being really focused and super driven and passionate about, because it's not easy to get in dental school. I don't know if it's gotten any easier or harder now, but 2000, what was it, 2-ish, when I was trying to get into dental schools, and University of North Carolina was the only college we had in the state then. It took 80 students a year. I think they had 1,000 apply. It was hard to get into. So, I started some different professional clubs at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, where I went to school, and really applied myself and kind of got going in the right direction on the educational front.
Brilliant. That's awesome, man. That's really good. So did you start dental school in 2002?
Yeah. I would say, into 2002. Yeah.
So that's right. So they started in 2002, and you brought your practice in 2008. You didn't have a lot of time as an associate.
No. So 2006, graduated dental school. 2007, finished my residency, and then came back to Raleigh. I worked in an associateship. I'd kind of sent out some letters at the end of my residency, seeing if any dentists were looking for a new grad out of residency. And I had a hit with a doc who kind of brought me in. It was more of a handshake deal. I kept asking about a contract. He was like, oh no, we'll just do contracts when it's time. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna transition out. And the team didn't know I was gonna be there. It was awkward. It wasn't a great experience. And so a friend of mine, Michael Riccobeni, who owns a big DSO now, he only had 3 practices then, offered for me to work for him. And so I went and started working for him full time, while I actually started the process within 6 months of getting out of my residency of building my first practice. So there wasn't much time, but again, for me, the clinical foundation was incredibly strong. My residency I did a ton of research. I found one of the best ones in the country, and got a really, really good, strong clinical footing. So I could just focus on the business side. I didn't have to worry about, how to cut a crown or how to take a tooth out. I had a really good foundation there.
No, that's awesome. Because I was just starting to piece it together. I was like, you did not work or you didn't work for someone else for very long.
Yeah.
It was like you just sort of like straight into it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, jumped right in. Yeah.
So one of the questions I like to ask is like, what did you learn as an associate? So did you have enough time to learn anything from an associate perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a little bit from Rico, as I call him now. He's a good friend of mine. So he shared, kind of, man, that was 6 months, 14 years ago. I don't know what I picked up from him, but I'm sure more about how to take care of patients, because in residency and school, you aren't really worried about money and treatment plan in terms of the financial side. So I'm sure I learned some about that, and how to provide great customer service and take care of patients outside of the clinical side of things. But and I kind of saw how he ran and scheduled things a bit. But really, I mean, you can watch and you can see as much as you want. where you really learn where the rubber meets the road is just jumping into it. There's just so many systems and so many speed bumps that you've just got to experience and solve yourself and be one to understand, all right, I'm tired of experiencing this problem repeatedly. It's time to solve it. So for me, my threshold was like 2 or 3 times. I'm like, all right, system, let's get it in place. I don't want to deal with this again. So I probably back then it was Dental Town, so spent thousands of hours reading. I'm not one to reinvent the wheel. Like I would rather see how somebody else did it and learn from them. And so I spent as much time as I could learning. And then there's only so far that goes, and you just got to jump in and you got to figure it out.
I guess you probably learned quite quickly that you should have contracts in place, because that sounds like a bit of a messy experience.
Yeah. That was definitely a mistake on my part. I was just so eager to have something lined up when I got out of my residency that I jumped. Honestly, it worked out well because it didn't have anything holding me down. I was just like, all right, I'm going to take off.
Yeah.
Contract to hold me there. So it worked out well. But I would say, whenever I have a associate come into our practice, there's a contract in place. There's an email out to the team. Everyone's very welcoming. We have a plan to transition them in. And so it's much for the associate. It feels like a great experience. At least I think, to come into our practice and know that everyone's expecting them and welcoming them and know what to kind of anticipate versus a situation like that was more of a handshake. He was an old school doc. He finally did transition out about, I don't know, it was just a few years ago. So what was that, like 10, 12 years after I was in there? So I'm very glad I left because I was ready to own a business pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool, man. So the fact that you literally took you 6 months to get to that start that sort of part of your journey, what did friends and family think? Like, did they think it, like, were they worried for you? Like, is that, it's quite a big jump, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, anytime you open up a new practice, I was 28 years old at the time, and I'm about to take out a $500,000 loan to go open a business. It's always a little bit stressful for me, but I had a strong plan, a strong vision. So people around me just, as long as you seem confident in what you're doing and they might be a little bit unsure, but they're going to support you if you seem like you have a plan. I mean, I think confidence and having a plan and doing your research is what it's all about. And then people will kind of get behind and support you for that.
Yeah, I guess if you're stumbling around saying, I think I might do this, I think I might do that, then they might be like, have you really thought it through?
Yeah, I still remember calling my accountant and going, hey, at this point I was just an associate and I had a house and it was like a friend accountant. We actually still use him a little bit, but I called him and said, hey, I want to open up a practice. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, don't you want to buy a practice? It makes so much more sense to wait and find a practice. But there weren't any good practices available in Raleigh at the time. I don't know there even are now, but it was hard to find one. And they were very kind of hush hush. It was like who you knew, you would find out about this practice for sale. And I was fresh out of school. I didn't have any connections. So I was like, I'm going to start one. And thank God I did. I mean, it went really well. Learned a lot, made some mistakes, but I found a good spot and grew quick.
But actually, that's going to be the next thing I was going to ask you. What made you start a practice rather than buying one? But that's obviously a very good clarification of that.
Yeah, I think I couldn't find any to buy at the time.
Perfect. Yeah. And you're not one to let things like that stop you. So
yeah,
screw it.
Yeah, excellent. Definitely not.
So what did you? So what? So right. So what was it? What was it like to start opening the practice? Like, what was that like as a process? And then what did you learn sort of during those first couple of years as an owner of a practice?
Yeah. So, I remember getting it opened and, you're just focused on so many different things from like, it's lease and then it's loan and then it's design, construction and it's equipment selection and finishes. So you're just and while you're working. And so it's like almost overwhelming all the different decisions to make. So it distracts you from the fact you're about to open up a dental office for with a $500,000 loan and many thousands dollar a month rent payment and employees. And you've got zero patients when you open the door. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's impossible to know. Nobody has a crystal ball what's going to happen. You've never done this before. So it's, every once in a while you'd be hit with these kind of waves of terror of what happens if the phone doesn't ring. And I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs and, yeah, I never thought about like going bankrupt or anything, but I mean, I guess that's a potential if it had gone there. But no, I mean, so it's just you're so busy making all these decisions that you didn't have a ton of time to stress. But certainly, it hit me every once in a while. And then once we got open, I still remember, and every time I open up a practice, if I'm there, you still hear it. It's like the first few months where it's just so quiet in an office. I mean, you can hear crickets, because you might have one patient in there at a time. There might be like an hour break. It's a new practice for the first 6 months, especially. It's very up and down. I mean, you might go 2 hours or have a morning, it just falls apart. And you're literally just sitting around trying to figure out what to have your team do because they're getting paid with no patients. So I remember the early days of crickets. And then it was kind of weird. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 months in, we finally started getting some mailers out, and I believe it was the mailers, and like all of a sudden our phone just started going crazy. I mean, we shot up to like, I mean, I look back at the first week I was open now back in April 2008, and I had like 1 or 2 patients that first day, maybe like 5 patients that week. I think our first month, that May, we did like $18,000 or $20,000 in production, which isn't, I mean, I didn't have to pay myself. I had saved up a bunch of money. So I think it was like barely enough to pay our bills, maybe not enough to pay our bills, but it was all right. I mean, like now that practice will do on some days, I mean, it's 12 ops now, 3 docs. We'll do double that in a day sometimes. So, what we did in a month, we'll like do a lot more than a day. But the early days are a little bit stressful because there's you don't have the patient flow. You're sitting there, and what else can you be doing? But it grew quickly. We were in a good spot. It doesn't always happen like that, but in that case it did. So I got lucky, and that kind of created the core busy practice to then go see the other ones. So I was fortunate for that.
Fantastic. And what you mentioned sort of the flyers and the leaflet drops. What did you know about marketing sort of starting that practice? Did you know much, or was it something you had to pick up?
Just what I read about on Dental Town, what other people were doing. Back then it was like mailers. Digital marketing wasn't a big thing back then. SEO and Google ads were like a little bit of a thing, but not much. It was like mailers and kind of word of mouth. And we were just asking every patient to send their friends and doing everything we could to kind of get, doing donut drops to the different businesses around us, everything we could to try to get people in. But the mailers seemed to be what worked back then. And that was when I don't know how effective they are now, but they were certainly effective back then initially. And then it kind of waned off after a while. But by that point, we had enough word of mouth to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, fantastic. So you mentioned that you had 12 chairs, 12 up trees. Is it 12
in that
now?
office? Yeah, 12 ops now.
What did you start with? So what was the initial chair count?
I mean, we opened up, it was built for 5 ops, and I equipped 2 of them. So we had 2 ops, one for restorative, 1 for hygiene. And when those were full and I needed a third one, at that point I got a loan and got a 3rd chair, and then a 4th, and then a 5th, and just kept going.
See, I just can't visualize like a building that goes from like 5 surgeries, 5 optometries to like 12. Like I'm expecting like this like higgledy-piggledy add-on thing. Yeah, does it look like that? I'll have to...
Yeah, I mean, essentially, so we were a 2,000 square foot 5-op practice, and in 2018. I waited way too long. I should have done the big mistake I made was not doing this 5 years earlier, but there was 2,000 square foot next to us. So I expanded that 2,000 square foot, did 12 ops. I mean, we went from 2 million in revenue to 4 million in revenue last year within 3 years. So it's like, I could have done that 5 years earlier. And now I'm just like, want to beat my head against the ground because, I'm very glad, I'm an entrepreneur by heart. And so I was out starting a restaurant and then starting a technology company. And so I wasn't as focused on the business and expanding it as I should have. But looking back, that was a big mistake I made, was not to expand that practice way earlier.
And you think it was just because you had other things to look at? You weren't sort of just focused on that particular practice?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of that, and just a little bit of not realizing, because we had just become so complacent. We were at max capacity, 5 ops, $2 million a year in insurance practice, maybe a little over 2 million. That's about as much as you can get out of a practice if you're doing your own implants. And, we did CEREC, implants, endo in-house. We did a lot of stuff in-house. That's about as much as you're going to get. But we were still able to get new patients in because we had the leaky bucket, right? We weren't focused on retention. And so I was like, well, we're still getting new patients in. I don't think we have capacity. We need to expand. But then when we expanded and it's like, all right, we need to grow, we sealed up the bucket, really focused on retention, and then just grew like crazy. Got our new patient numbers back up from like 60 to 70 a month, which it had kind of dwindled down to because we weren't focused on it, to where we're at like 150 a month at that location. Once we expanded and really focus on, I guess marketing, but more community relations for us.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point to make though, because I think a lot of practices are guilty of just focusing on new patients and almost not necessarily neglecting their existing patients, but just kind of just ignoring them and assuming that they'll come back, or there's always going to be some attrition, like people move area and obviously some that kind of thing, pass away, that kind of thing. But to kind of not pay them any attention is kind of you're kind of you're sort of cutting your own hand off, aren't you, really?
Well, I wrote an article about this for Dental Economics. It's like finding the hidden gold mine in your practice. Like spending money on marketing without sealing up your bucket, is kind of crazy to me now. Like if you're not doing everything you can to retain your patients, but you're spending all this money on marketing, like it's almost just, you're just replacing patients instead of growing your practice. So you got to do both. You got to seal up that bucket, focus on retention, reappointments, everything you need to do to keep your patients happy and coming back, and not letting them fall off the wagon in terms of recurring treatment or prevention. And then layer in that marketing, that like patient boost marketing, bringing patients in. And then that's when you really see your practice skyrocket. And that's kind of what we did.
Yeah, man, I could not have put it better myself.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic explanation of kind of how you should approach marketing in a practice. And that's brilliant, man. So you've obviously over time you expanded that practice, and obviously it sounds like it was just a very handy situation that you could just move into that extra 2,000 sort of feet next to it. That's like that's so lucky. Like that doesn't normally happen. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you had that practice going. Obviously, it wasn't 12 ops at the time, but what then drove you to start? I need another practice. Now, obviously, I know I could probably say you were bored, but what else was going on? Like
a little bit of that, and then a friend of mine lived closer to downtown Raleigh. So my original office was way up in Northeast Raleigh, and I had moved since then down closer to downtown. And I was spending a lot of time downtown. And a friend of mine kind of lived downtown. We were both single at the time and hanging out a lot, kind of on the weekends, and just enjoying life. And then so he was like, hey, I've always had this idea to open up a practice in downtown, like called Downtown Dental. And I was like, well, let's do it. There's no dentist in downtown Raleigh. We're down here all the time. Like we know a ton of people downtown. Let's open up this practice, call it Downtown Dental. And so in 2012, we started, I don't know if we opened in 2012 or we started the process in 2012, but around 2012, 2013, we opened up Downtown Dental in downtown Raleigh. And it's a much, much different kind of demographic and vibe than our original office. My original office called Wells Family Dental Group, in that it's much more urban looking, streamlined, almost industrial looking practice. We see a lot of millennials, business owners, lawyers. It's not nearly as many families coming in there. It's actually rarity to see a family, but that practice is that capacity now too. I need to expand that one. But in 2018, I kind of rolled that into so we had it 50-50. In 2018, I kind of rolled that into my original office. And then my partner at the time took a minority stake in everything. And then that got me a majority stake. I would say that was one thing that kind of held us back, was being 50-50 in that practice, because neither of us really had the majority ownership to take the direction of the practice. And as soon as it went where I acquired the majority of the practice, then again, it just went boom, because I had a plan. It was my baby now. And then I took it under my wing, and we really blew that practice up. So
you could fully unleash your vision.
Yeah. I mean, that would be one thing I've learned over time, is that, practices, I think businesses are not run best with democracies. They're kind of run best with like a totalitarian, like single person making the final call. But sure, I mean, like I'm going to listen to input from all the people who own it and all the people who are employed by me. I'm going to listen to input, but you got to have one person who's responsible for making those decisions and who can make those decisions. Otherwise, it just kind of putters your growth. So that's another thing to consider for anybody out there looking to start a practice with a partner is I would strongly recommend having one person have the majority of equity in the business, where the buck stops there.
Yeah, because there's definitely, it sounds like too many cooks. There's that old saying, isn't there? Like if there's too many cooks, is it the broth or whatever tastes shit? I don't know what the.
I don't know. I mean, I've got partners in all my practices now. I sell a little bit of equity in each location because I don't want to deal with turnover of my best docs, and so they buy in. They get like a quarter of the practice or a third of the practice. But I still own the majority, and then they know I'm going to make that final decision. They have input, and we have monthly meetings and whatnot. But I'm going to make that final decision for the business. So
yeah, that's perfect. So that was obviously that was practice 2, and that was kind of the start of the group once you got sort of full majority.
Yeah, it wasn't really going to be a group at that point. It was just another practice. A buddy of mine who we were good friends were like, hey, let's do this together. And we were hanging out in downtown a lot, and it was a fun place. It was really starting to come alive, and we wanted to be the first dentist down there. So it was just going to be 2. And then I have a lot of friends in the Triangle who own multiple location practices. Rico's at 40, Triangle Family Dentistry are friends of mine. They own 6 or 7. And so I didn't want to compete with them. So I wanted to do my 2 and then find another business model that I could like grow into a big thing. And that's why I kind of started the restaurant. It was a really great restaurant called TCH Gourmet Hot Dog Companies. We had 8 gourmet hot dogs, homemade fries with 8 dipping sauces, 8 milkshakes. It was a really cool concept. And I was like, well, I'm going to franchise this, and this will be my thing. And, I got to the last round of interviews for Shark Tank. That was pretty interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, ultimately realized there that you cannot, we are really blessed to be in dentistry, and that it's a lot easier to be successful and profitable in dentistry. Your margins are a lot better than in the restaurant business, where you're at like 5-7% on average, and you take your eye off the ball and you're in the negative. I mean, you got your staff dumping food, put money in their pocket. It's so easy to lose money in restaurants. And my big mistake there was not having a sweat equity operator in that business. Had I done that, it would still be open today. It was a great model. People loved it. It just, I just tried to, I owned everything. I owned 100% of it. And that was my big mistake there.
And that's good. But again, like, I guess that is, did you know you needed someone with equity in the business to run it, or at that stage, or was that kind of when you started to figure that out?
That's where I figured it out. Yeah. That's where now, whenever I have it, that's where I learned, hey, if I'm going to own a business, ownership is what matters to people. So if you want people really passionate about your business, where your interests are aligned and the best chance for success, don't be stingy with that equity. Get other people aligned with you who have your best interest and the business best interests aligned. And really, equity is the only way to do that. So that was my big mistake with that business. And, now it's almost like, hey, I'm the visionary. I can go start these businesses. If I get an operator who's really passionate about it and give them some equity, I can almost just meet with them regularly, give them independence to go run the thing, and just feed them different vision ideas about where to go and kind of mentor them a bit and let them take and run. I've just done that with Dental HQ. After we raised money, I hired a CEO and a COO to run the operations for that company, where I can still be the strategic visionary, but I brought in some really talented people who have a background in SaaS to run the day-to-day operations. And I think that's a really
good lesson to learn, though, because I think a lot of people are, sort of hell bent on like keeping control, almost doing everything themselves. But you kind of got to realize your strengths and sort of realize your strengths, step back, and sometimes let other people take the reins. No, that's really cool, man. So I have to ask, and this is very off topic or left field, why hot dogs?
I don't even like hot dogs. I mean, I like them better now, but back in 2014, I don't know if you remember, but like all the gourmet burger chains were popping off. It was like BurgerFi and Five Guys and Smash Burger, all these different gourmet burger chains were just popping off, like becoming billion-dollar companies. And I was like, why isn't there a gourmet hot dog? People love hot dogs. I have always, there's a restaurant up in New York. I forget what it was called, but all they served was Belgium style French fries with dipping sauces. So they had like 30 or 40 different dipping sauces in these homemade fries. And I've been wanting to find a concept to combo with that. And so I was like, all right, here it is, like gourmet hot dogs. And I hired a restaurant consulting company that had a chef who came in and made just amazing, delicious hot dogs, amazing, delicious homemade Belgium style French fry. Like we went through 4 steps from a potato to make these amazing French fries. Came up with 8 dipping sauces, 8 milkshakes. It was a great concept, but that's why it was, because I was looking for something I could franchise. I wanted something to go that I could build and replicate, and that was going to be my version of growing something huge outside of dentistry. And it would have worked if I had had a sweat equity operator.
Yeah. And so, what's the plan to kind of grow that as separately, obviously separate, and stay within dentistry as a practicing dentist and the couple of practices? Or were you thinking you might go all in and sort of step back from dentistry?
Well, I think if it had really taken the problem was a restaurant needs a full-time operator. Like I thought I could be a part-time, and these restaurant consultant group kind of gave me bad advice and saying, hey, no, we'll get really good systems in place. You can be a dentist and just, help run it as much as you're available, but the systems will basically run itself. Not true in restaurants. I don't care how good of a restaurant you own. It's got to be, owner operated full-time. You can have 5 restaurants, but as long as that's your only, gig, and you have full-time managers or GMs in each of them, fine. But you cannot be an owner operator of a restaurant and be a dentist all day, every day. And I was working 4 or 5 days in the chair at that point. So it was not a combination for success. And so that was the mistake.
Was that, and how quickly did you realize it wasn't going to work out, or how quickly did you cut your losses?
We opened in 2014. I learned a lot. I've learned a lot of my failures, which is important. But we opened in 2014. We had lines down the street. Like, people were so excited about this thing, and we were losing money. And I was like, "What the hell is going on here? How are we like?" Lines down the street. We were charging $7 for a hot dog. I mean, people were writing articles about how expensive our hot dogs were, and like, how are we losing money? So I actually dove into that business, learned inventory and procurement and sourcing strategy, got our vendors bid against each other, took over the scheduling, was probably putting 30, 40 hours a week in the restaurant, got it profitable, and then set the systems up. And then it was like, all right, it's profitable. I'm making a few $1,000s a month, but over here in dentistry, I'm doing a lot better than that. It was hard to commit 30, 40 hours a week for that. And then I realized quickly that if I'm not in this business full time, in this restaurant business, I'm not going to get the margins to 15 to 20%, which is where you have to be to franchise it. And so it kind of just became obvious to me, hey, if I put 30 to 40 hours a week in, and I maybe make $10,000 a month out of this business at best, but I could put 30 to 40 hours in a week over here and do significantly better than that. It just doesn't make sense to keep this thing operated if I can't franchise it. So within 3 or 4 years, the Shark Tank thing came up. I got to the last section, or the last interview of that, or phone call for that, and I lost out the wine and design, I think. And when I didn't get that, I had just started the process of building Dental HQ and have it designed and built. And I got out of that, sold it, and then pivoted completely all my extra time to Dental HQ, and then scaling, and then started my group, opened up 3rd location. Okay. Dental HQ 2017, 3rd location 2018, and kind of ran with both of those.
So you sort of left the food industry, or the hospitality industry, and sort of went still sort of diversified, but just within dentistry, which was probably a good thing. Yeah. So at this point you've got 2 practices. You've just sold, or you've been running a gourmet hot dog company. Where does Dental HQ fit in it? So tell everyone what Dental HQ is and where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, well, it's 2012. I'm sitting in a lecture at Dr. Charles Blair down in Hemet in Atlanta. He started talking about this new offering that dentists are starting to put out there called like a discount plan or an in-house membership plan, where dentists were selling a package of cleanings, exams, x-rays for a set fee, and then members got a discount on additional treatment. And it was one of those light bulb moments for me. I was like, this is so cool. I can package up a transparent priced package of services. I was like, tried to hire friends to go sell these out in the community, like our card, our package. And so we did that. We launched that, but we were selling it for like $300 or $400 a year, which was great for retaining patients, but it wasn't great for attracting new patients, because a new patient calls and we go, oh, we got this membership plan. It's $400 a year. They go, oh, that's a lot of money. Like, I don't know you guys. If you're an existing patient and 2 exams, cleanings, x-rays are $500 a year, and you're going to be coming back next year, it makes sense to drop $400 and they get the discount services. But for a new patient, it didn't. So within a couple years, I was like, I'd really love to create a monthly version of this to attract more new patients into our practice at like $30 a month. And there wasn't a great solution out there, that I found that could give me the flexibility and the customization and what I really wanted to do with it. So I started the process in 2016 of building my own platform that would process payments, track members. It gave you a nice white labeled landing page to describe your membership program, marketing materials. So I built a company, Dental HQ, to do all that for myself and then for other dentists. And we launched at the end of 2017, and we've just been growing ever since. And we, there's obviously other players in the space now, but for me, the fun part for me is, I'm a creative problem solver. So as I deal with a problem in dentistry and growing my kind of mini DSO or whatever, I can solve problems there. I have a technology company where I can automate these solutions, and we're now building different financial solutions into Dental HQ to solve problems that I and other dentists are facing. So we've built things like Business Connect, where you can take your membership plan to small businesses and they can enroll their employees in a fully automated closed loop with your practice. Really cool stuff we've done, and innovative stuff. And so that's, I think, what kind of sets us apart, is we're the most innovative in the bunch in terms of creating new stuff that doesn't exist, that's solving real problems for dentists. And so that's where we're at. We raised some money earlier this year. We finished a round, and then I brought in a CEO and a COO because I understand my limitations in growing a technology and SaaS company. I've got a strong vision for where I want to take the product and where I want to take the company, but I don't, the day-to-day operational stuff of building the product. And it was taking us way too long to build new stuff. And so these guys, Haas and Kendra, are just really rock stars. And I've done this before, and tons of experience in SaaS. And so now I get to sit back and do what I love, be on podcasts, network, and still lead the strategic vision of the company while I've got some rock stars running it day to day.
That is such a cool story. And it sums you up as well, doesn't it? It sums you up as an individual. There was a problem. The solution that I wanted didn't exist, so I'm just going to build it.
Yeah.
And it's not a small thing to build, like the SaaS product. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money. Like, it's not a straight. It's probably harder. Would you say it's harder than building a practice, or?
Well, I would say now I can build a practice and it's pretty easy to do. But like, anytime you go into a new industry or do something, like building a new practice for me was a new industry for the first time. Going into the restaurant business, going into technology, anytime you go into a new industry or a new space, the learning curve is very expensive. So you're going to make a lot of mistakes that are going to cost you a lot of money at the beginning. But then as you find success, you don't make those mistakes again. So you can replicate or expand, and things are a lot less expensive. But there's certainly a steep learning curve in terms of knowledge and money whenever you go into a new space.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's next? What's next for the dental group, and what's next for Dental HQ? What's on the roadmap?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple more offices we just opened with the dental group. So, I mean, everyone talks about, roses and rainbows with startups. We launched these 2 new startups, and I knew one of them was going to be a slower start. The other one I thought was going to be a much quicker start, but they're not growing as quickly as I wanted. So now I've got to roll the sleeves up and get in there and do some work, because I'm kind of, I don't know what they call it, but I could do everything, and then I'm free. But so starting a practice where you don't have a free founder doing all the work is a different challenge than starting a practice like my original one, where I could work and not charge the business anything. So that's what 25% of the cost of the practice is the doc. And so I'm probably gonna have to get in there and kind of get it off the ground a little bit. So, they don't always just open the doors and then you get flooded with new patients. Sometimes it's a slow ramp up, which is what I'm seeing with these new practices, especially in the world we're dealing with now. So a lot of my focus is pivoted back to these 2 new offices and getting those off the ground. Dental HQ is pretty exciting with our new leadership team in place. We're getting our product. We're about to release a whole new platform, essentially, with different tiers and integrations and lots of cool new features we're rolling out with more analytics and a lot of cool stuff. And then we're going to pivot to building out more fintech solutions around like treatment plan presentation and different financial technology services that are going to solve real problems that I'm working on solving in my practice. So a lot of cool, fun stuff I get to do there. I get to be more creative with the technology company, I think, than the dental offices.
That's so cool. Honestly, so cool. It's such a cool story, Brett. Like really cool.
Yeah.
You're just unstoppable. Like, you're relentless. Just keep going. So do you think it's kind of like, do you think they have both the group and the Dental HQ, have they got your attention for now? Or is there something on the horizon, or are you kind of focused on those 2?
No, I mean, I'm not going to bring any other businesses into the fold. I am launching, this would be something to share, something called Sunflower Project. I think we're going to launch it tomorrow. It's for Ukrainian refugees. We've got a hotel in the city of Tbilisi, the country of Georgia. They've taken about 50,000 refugees so far. So we've got 1 hotel. We've got a bunch more after that. We're trying to fill up with refugees. So we've got a 1% pledge. If you got a business, you want to pledge 1% of 1 month's revenue towards it. You can get a nice little sticker to put on your website about it, digital sticker. So that's one thing I'm doing. Bandwidth wise, I don't know if I should have taken it on, but we have an executive director and stuff too now. So that's kind of one thing where I probably didn't have time for it, but it's such an important cause, I think, that we just put the time and resources into making it happen. So
yeah, exactly. And I guess you're fortunate to be in a position to be able to help the people, like those people,
right. Yeah,
in a meaningful way, because everyone making donations is great, but like setting up something that can sort of have a real big impact is not a lot of people have the opportunity to do that. So
yeah, well, with the technology company and my connections to dentistry, it just, I'm in a unique position where I could, we got the website built, we got the URL, and then got the people in place to run it. So we'll see how it does. I'm hoping for big things. The more money we raise, the more refugees we can house over in the country of Georgia. So
fantastic. Well, I'll get the details from you, and I'll include them in the show notes.
Okay,
that'd be awesome. But no, brilliant. But honestly, Brett, this has been fantastic. Like, I've learned a lot.
Good.
I know people listening to it will learn a lot. So I like to ask every guest this, but what would be your number 1 piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice?
Read as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and then really, I know it's hard time right now with staffing, but really focus on finding the right people to surround yourself with. And then delegate and elevate. It's an EOS thing. So bring your people up as you move up in the company. So I think those are some good key points.
Brilliant, perfect. And then finally, how can people get in touch with you or follow you or anything like that?
Yeah, so Brett at dentalhq.com, BRETT at dentalhq.com is the easiest way to email me. And, you can, if you're interested in Dental HQ, you can go on our website. There's you can get a demo and schedule a time for that. We get really cool technology to go check out. And, we got a lot more stuff coming too. So, but happy to answer any emails. If anybody's got questions about startups or hot dogs, technology, whatever they're thinking.
I hope you get flooded with, you probably won't, but I hope you get flooded with people just asking about hot dogs now.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Skip over dentistry and straight to hot dogs. No, it's brilliant. See, I did not know that as going into this podcast. I did not expect you to turn around to me and say that for several years you had a potential gourmet hot dog franchise on the go.
You can Google it. I mean, we still have pictures if you Google it. It is a really
what was the name of it?
It was Tasty and then 8, the number 8. So
Tasty 8.
Yeah,
I'll check that out.
It was cool.
Perfect. And that's brilliant. Right, Brett. You're a very busy person, as we've just clarified. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to share this episode with the audience. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. Had a great time.